Hello, 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 and welcome to this edition of Office Hours with Lanora, the home edition. I am in my backyard, decided to come outside today versus being in the house because it was really sunny outside and my neighbor was cutting the grass, and I said, let me just get a little air, a little fresh air, but it looks like it's about to start raining, so let me be quick. Today's episode of Office Hours with Lanora let's talk about the pandemic effect and how the COVID-19 pandemic has affected the real estate market and industry itself. We know that our Office Hours with Lanora serves 3 points. The very first point is to help those individuals that are probably looking for information pertaining to starting a career in real estate, get that information. Point number 2 is for those that have begun a journey and maybe they are in a pre-licensing course right now or very new in the industry, to help them pass that licensing or pre-licensing course on a first attempt. And point number 3 is for the individual that is already in the industry to stay in the industry. So our topic again is how the COVID-19 pandemic has affected the real estate industry. So I've put together my notes. You're going to find me looking down reading because I don't want to miss a thing, but I also want to be quick. Let's talk about the very first thing, which is the biggest elephant in the room and what effect that elephant had on our industry. And it was the shelter in place and non-business order guidance. Keep in mind, the U.S. Department of Homeland Security deemed certain individuals as essential, and there was what is called a critical infrastructure workforce. So that was simply a list of work types, employment types, like your grocery store, like the gas station, like places where you can go get essential items while we were under mandate to stay at home. This list did not include real estate professionals in the very beginning. It came out in March of 2020. It took 2 weeks and a whole lot of convincing from the National Association of Realtors, as well as the local associations like the Chicago Association of Realtors and the state level associations similar to the Illinois Realtors, the convincing to the Homeland Security Department to let them know that we are deemed essential. Just like you had to go to the grocery store to get your food and other necessities to be able to stay in the home, it was important for you to have a home to come to or to go to. And that's why 2 weeks later, after that initial list was released, real estate professionals were then added as essential employees or essential workers, not employees, because we're not employees, essential workers. That was huge. It was a game changer because without us being able to move, to be able to show properties, to be able to go in and out of those inspections and appraisals and closings, so on and so forth, and take our clients along with us, the industry would have went to a dead halt as it did. But becoming essential helped us. So when you are paying your monies for your real estate association dues, a lot of your money goes towards those things like that. So kudos to the associations that spoke up to keep us working. Let's also talk about how technology played a huge role and how significant and a lot of the changes that occurred because of the pandemic. We continue to use technology differently in the real estate industry. So during the pandemic, we had to navigate, tilt, shift, whatever, pivot, whatever words that you've been hearing. We had to do that as a part of being able to get information out. Not every homeowner wanted to have people walking through their home because this pandemic was lurking and we didn't know what it looked like, what it smelled like, if it would, be found on cloth or countertops or doorknobs. So many of the real estate professionals found it easier to do things like 360 virtual tours, your FaceTime tours, your Facebook Live tours, your video chat tours, as well as pre-recorded walkthroughs. So that meant that the broker themselves went into the property, recorded first without their client being there with them, and then shared that recording with their client to make sure they were interested in going back and seriously considering purchasing said property to take a second look. We were handling business, and that was part of the way that it was being done by the real estate professionals, taking advantage of technology. CE renewals was another thing that was impacted by the pandemic. Originally, from a previous live, I explained to you all the time periods and when renewals were to take place. So the broker renewal was smack dab right at the very beginning of the pandemic, which would have been April 30th of 2020. So every broker in the state of Illinois needed at that point to renew their license. They needed to go to class. They needed to be able to communicate with their brokers, with their managing brokers, whether that be in an office setting or if that were to be in a classroom setting. But they couldn't do that because guess what? Many of the schools, including my own, the Realtors Real Estate School, physically to the public, we were closed. But what happened because of the pandemic, we literally picked up our schools and took them home as the employees. We took that school home and we amped up webinars. We amped up online platforms, self-study courses, and a lot of people buckled down and got the work done. Yes, it is a benefit to being in the classroom, but because we could not do it, we were still under that stay-at-home mandate. You guys would be surprised how many people we broke records last year in terms of the number of people that were taking webinars, Zoom classes, self-study online classes, instructor-led also, but from a virtual standpoint. A little over a year ago, our home sales as an industry halted. Again, because sellers weren't comfortable with putting their homes on the market, not knowing who's coming and going, freely touching everything in their home, who could have potentially been exposed to this deadly virus. So what happened was, with that taking a halt, we lost some traction in our market, and I'll give you some stats. The COVID-19 pandemic brought a lot of economic uncertainty. Even lenders were having trouble and were halting lending because of the unemployment uncertainty. So the market in terms of real estate dipped in April, and it picked up again with full force in June of 2020. Remember, for the state of Illinois and Chicago, June 1st was that magic date for us when the mandate, the stay-at-home mandate, allowed us to begin to move about. After the plunge, from when we started in the initial pandemic or the stay-at-home mandate in March, 18% of our market dropped from March to April, and then another 10% from April to May. But that June 1st date, it's like somebody clicked on the light switch and we jumped 21% just in that month alone here in the state of Illinois, in Chicago in particular. And that was according to the National Association of Realtors. What happened was also that affected our industry. It became difficult to find what we call affordable for sale homes and investment properties in particular, because now prices were rising because we're in a seller's market. When we're in a seller's market, demand is high, inventory is low. So you began to see astronomical numbers where things were happening where there were so many buyers. And I'm talking about where sellers were getting offers of 20, 40, 50 contracts on one house at a time because there was limited inventory. So if that house was in good condition, pretty good condition, move-in condition, almost always it got multiple offers and there was a bidding war on it. We also noticed that with the investors, in terms of the multi-family properties, your apartment buildings, your multi-unit buildings, that industry or that area of our industry took a slump because investors weren't willing to pay market value at the increased premium that traditional homeowners like myself, where it's a single family home, were paying. A lot of investors are beginning to come back to the industry, but to many of them, including myself, prices might still be a little inflated. And that pandemic effect has occurred in the investment areas. Let's talk about international buying. It is still down. It slumped tremendously because part of the mandate, the stay-at-home mandate, prevented us from traveling. You could not go to Canada. You could not go to Jamaica. Now, borders are beginning to open. Canada is just easing some of the restrictions to allow people to come and go. Remember, there was no vaccine last year. Only recently have they started rolling out those vaccines. So because people had not been exposed to the vaccines, you could not travel because there was a greater risk of you spreading the virus or being exposed to the virus. Even the air travel industry suffered because folks just weren't hopping on planes or driving back and forth places. If you were like me, you even got a credit from your insurance company because you weren't using your insurance and you weren't driving as much. So not only do those things affect the real estate industry, but just like the insurance industry as well. Let's talk about the closures. I'm sitting in my backyard right now. If this was pre-2020, most definitely I would be at 430 North Michigan Avenue working directly from the Realtor Building and the Chicago Association of Realtors office. But the pandemic caused us to start venturing, and even more of us working from home, significantly impacting our commercial sector because no one was in those buildings. There was no need to have a large workforce in the office because we, again, picked that office up and took it home. So our laptops, our tabletops, our kitchen tables began to be our mobile office areas. That impacted the commercial industries because it caused a bunch of closures. And if you were to drive downtown Chicago right now, you'll see, or if you go on some various commercial tours, you'll see the impact of that because a lot of those employers have had to open up and allow that work from home or telecommuting option more so than they ever have in the past. A lot of us won't be returning to Monday through Friday work. We probably will have some form of telecommuting as a package or an incentive going forward. So the need for large commercial spaces isn't there anymore. According to the National Association of Realtors, 93% of buyers started their search for a home online. So what does that mean to our industry? The real estate professionals had to step their game up. They had to start learning more about e-commerce systems. They had to learn more about those virtual tours, how to use Canvas, how to market your home in such a way without physically handing out paper or walking someone into said property. So I know at our school, at the Realtors Real Estate School, we did see an influx of students that began to take more designations and certifications. Maybe they were looking to find ways to specialize in working with buyers or working with sellers or staging a property in a particular way, whereas from a virtual standpoint as well as in person, it was sellable. Those same buyers began to work more with the real estate professionals that were fine-tuning how they were reaching out to those buyers or attracting those buyers. So you saw a lot more of those Facebook Lives. You saw a lot more of the digital ads because from a digital standpoint, our market just took the biggest leap and we are still soaring in that area. So kudos to those real estate professionals that found it necessary to pivot a lot more to get yourself out there and exposed. Zoom, FaceTime, other 3D platforms also were used to help market and put in position the industry as a whole. The median FICO score was affected by the real estate COVID-19 pandemic. Prior to the crash of, prior to the pandemic, the crash of 2008, we saw that the median FICO score was right about 600 or so, meaning that if your score was about 600, 620, the average person had the ability to purchase property. But now that FICO score has increased upwards of 40 points or more. So what does that mean to our industry? It means that for someone that is seeking to rent or lease a property, and most definitely someone seeking to purchase a property, their FICO score had to be almost in the 650, 660-ish area for them to be deemed credit worthy. Yeah, so what did that mean? That meant that a lot of people who at one point could purchase now found themselves not able to purchase, which thus affected them, because if we're in a seller's market, it was too hard to qualify for a mortgage. It was too hard for a seller when you come with a pre-approval that on paper didn't really look as strong as someone who could go get a pre-approval from a bank, like the Chase, the Chase of the world, the Bank of Americas of the world. It became an issue to find those ready, willing, and able buyers that were seriously ready to purchase. But when they did come out, they came out because a lot of those ready, willing, and able buyers did such things as cash offers. Huge. Those multiple offers a lot of times included exclusions, like folks weren't doing home inspections. They just wanted the house, so they X'd that out and excluded that as a part of their offer. There were long wait times to get into a house for an open house. So the various showings, you had to be deemed serious to be going in and out of someone's property. And when they did open up that house for an open house, the wait lines were long and the times were long. There also a change that I noticed in talking to a lot of my real estate friends that are actively selling. I don't. The earnest money jumped tremendously, where the average was about $1,000 to $5,000. It was now $10,000, $50,000 to show to that seller that they were seriously considering and wanted to purchase that home. So having those large amounts of earnest money down, being a ready, willing, and able buyer, sometimes even coming with cash, blew the competition out of the way. And most often at that point, your buyer was getting that deal. Another thing that was affected by our industry, market time. Homes were not sitting on the market very long. In fact, as we speak right now, there is enough inventory to last about a little over a month. And that's, when I say inventory, those are homes that are for sale. We used to be a little over 3 months, and that was at the tail end of 2020. So now, because there are some areas in our market, I'll take Tinley Park. I just read in Cranes on yesterday that the inventory in Tinley Park of homes for sale are almost depleted. There are pretty much not that very many homes available for sale in that area. So for example, if I lived in Tinley Park and I wanted to sell my home, this would be the best time to do that, because not having a plethora of inventory available drives the most traffic to your property. Okay, let's talk about home builder supplies. I'm sitting in my backyard right now. The fence that's right behind you is being replaced in a few weeks or so. But I had to wait to get that done because lumber prices were so high, which We were all at home during the pandemic and that mandate, and a lot of us started doing renovation projects that we didn't have the time to do, nor were we at home to do them. So because of that, market materials like lumber, materials like drywall and 2x4s skyrocketed because so many of us were using it. They were in such high demand. This fence behind me last year, just to give you a bit of insight, to replace just pretty much one side of my yard was about $4,200 I was quoted. This same fence, to get it replaced this year, this month, in a couple of weeks, is now costing me $6,100. Lumber prices are going down, but do you see what I mean by how the pandemic has affected not just that industry, but real estate as a whole, because people want to get projects done. Let's talk about next the big city exodus and what that means. The flight from our downtown areas. If you've noticed, the looting, the rioting, the skyrocketing of pricing in the downtown areas has caused a lot of people to move or to seek suburban living. Our industry was impacted in such a way that the downtown area of Chicago, properties weren't moving as fast as they were in the suburban areas. You could almost list something and within hours you had multiple offers in the suburbs. Whereas downtown, those particular properties, which may cost a tad bit more, which might be in what could be considered a skyscraper, did not move as fast, and still many of them have not. But the market will correct itself. The last elephant that we should talk about is that eviction moratorium and how that has affected our industry. The eviction moratorium has just done that. It halted a lot of rental leasing options for people. Landlords are hurting and will continue to hurt until that moratorium is lifted. Unfortunately, we may see a huge foreclosure effect from having that moratorium, because think of it this way: if your tenants can't pay or afford to pay because maybe they've been affected or impacted by the pandemic and lost their job, or their hours have been cut, now the landlord or the property owner can't pay the mortgage. So the moratorium stated that you couldn't put these, tenants out, that they had to have somewhere to live. This was their home as well, and they were protected to a degree. The court systems were closed, so you could not file a foreclosure motion against anyone. But that time is coming back around. I even just got a summons for jury duty next week. So the courts are slowly opening. The moratorium has been extended once again by the governor. It will be looked at probably within the next couple of weeks to determine should it be extended even further. But just know, for those property owners, landlords that are right now in a bind and suffering, the real estate professionals are here to help. And this is probably the best time to be reaching out to one of us so that you can find a way to ease the pressure that you're under right now. So those are some of the greatest ways that our industry has been impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. I'd like to mention some ways to kind of pump back into our industry some life. And remember, especially for those that are in the Chicagoland area, I want to give you some just general information to kind of keep hope. Remember that the Chicagoland area is an international hub. We're a hub for finance, culture, commerce, industry, education, technology, telecommunications, and transportation. They have to come through us here in the Chicagoland area. Being that hub, when this thing is said and done, we will grow again. We will be able to build again. Businesses will return back to our downtown areas and our local suburban and city Chicagoland areas. The tourism and hospitality sectors were tremendously impacted as well. But now with the convention centers opening back again, with the vaccines being so prevalent and so many people taking the vaccines, we are now able to congregate once again in such a way. So that should pump more money and more energy back into our sectors. Strong economic growth and job growth is on the horizon. The Chicagoland area and Illinois in particular, we have the largest number of federal highways and railroads in the nation. Again, they have to come through us. So because they have to come through us, many of them are going to stop. They're going to buy properties because we're so centralized. They're going to spend money. So the power of the dollar will come back. Don't give up. We also have high private sector employment. So it's not necessarily always the big box type of employers that are here, but my office in particular, it's a little over 40 of us that work there. We're not technically ranked as a Fortune 500 company, but you have 40 some odd people that are gainfully employed and are now using those dollars from employment and pumping them back into our local areas. We also are solid blue collar areas with high rents. So the rental industry in that market will come back. Just be positive. Be appreciative. Be thankful for life right now. This pandemic has affected so many people, not just the real estate industry, but this particular platform speaks about the real estate industry. Be steadfast in knowing that when it comes back, it's coming back, and we're coming back full force. I thank you for joining me on this episode of Office Hours with Lanora. Remember, at the Realtors Real Estate School, we are transitioning back to in-person classes. In fact, we have one starting next week. It is our full-time accelerated format, Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 4:30 for 2 weeks. That class filled up really fast. So if I were you and you're considering an in-person course, join us at the August 9th Monday through Friday 2-week accelerated format. You want to pre-register and prepay for this course. There are 32 seats. It is limited. We are still exercising social distancing at the Realtors Real Estate School. So secure your seat now. We will remain virtual for our Saturday sessions for the broker course. One will start this Saturday, July 10th. It is via Zoom, 9 a.m. to 4:30 with breaks. Our instructor for both the Saturday sessions and the 2-week accelerated format is the one and only Mr. Leo Schwartz. So for those of you that may want to know that, we will be moving into in-person sessions in August for our managing brokers as well. So August 23rd, we'll start our 1-week in length managing broker pre-licensing course. I look forward to helping you with your real estate educational needs. Thank you for joining me. All this month, I will be coming to you 12:30-ish during on Wednesdays. Next week, we're going to talk to Mr. Jason Casebolt, who will give you a student's perspective of his journey into real estate, as well as some tips and techniques or some help on choosing a school like the Realtors Real Estate School. And Jason will speak from his experience. So thanks for joining me. Ta-ta for now. Bye-bye.